All right, so I titled this Targeting Behaviors Around the Where to Aim, and hopefully I'll be able to answer that question by the end of the presentation, but we'll see. Also, this was not just me. Steve Robb from OpinionWorks was a major partner in this, and it was funded through the Chesapeake Bay Trust, Casey Wetzel, and then we had a variety of people from Ian doing the surveys and the analysis. So I want to just talk about social marketing campaigns in general. This is not my, usual expertise, but I think it's really important to think about it for this particular project. I'll go over the survey and then the results of the survey and talk a little bit about impact data. So why give the survey? So you want to inform behavior selection for watershed organizations. What does that really mean? It means we have these watershed groups. They go out and they say, hey guys, let's pick up litter, or hey, let's reduce fertilizer on our lawn. But they don't really know whether or not the constituents in their neighborhoods and in their watersheds are interested in that, right? If they're likely to stop fertilizing their lawn and really what they're doing currently. So this survey can help target the behaviors that will actually work well in different watersheds. And allows for a return on investment consideration. And so this is another reason for these groups, when there's limited resources and they need to show that they're really making a difference, this is a way to optimize that return on investment based on the funding that they get. So it demonstrates this need to funding agencies and stakeholders. Again, these watershed organizations, they're always looking for funding. It's very hard to get repetitive funding unless you have like dues and things like that. So this is a really good way to highlight, hey, we really do need that money to install rain barrels, for instance. So one thing, borrowing this from Steve's presentation, engaging the public in stewardship. So this was asked in Maryland, can water pollution be fixed? And 85% of the people said, yes, it can be fixed. And the original question was, when you think about pollution in our local waters, do you think the problem can be fixed or is it too difficult? So we know people think it's fixable, and it's something that they're optimistic about. But where do we fall when it comes to actually doing behaviors? And so what we have here is this curved line, and most people fall under this help me section. They want to do something, they want to help, but they just don't know how. They need like some experts to come in and help them do those things. You have these early adopters and innovators. These people are already doing it. They're out there, they're the ones creating a more efficient rain barrel or more technology to help green their landscapes. And then you've got the people that are at the end, the make me group, and those are only going to ever do it if it's regulated, right? So this middle group is kind of who we're targeting. However, as opposed to that, you need a lot of level of investment to change behavior. Like I said, over here and over here, you're going to have a lot of effort involved with talking to a small amount of the population. So what social marketing does is it lowers the level of investment that you need to get to this help me group by doing this kind of broad spectrum approach. So what we wanted to look at this with this project was the impact of a behavior on water quality and how much penetration, which is also considered level of adoption in the community, and then what the likelihood that the public would adopt the behavior. So in some ideal world, you have a behavior like installing a rain barrel that has a high impact on water quality. It's going to reduce nutrients and sediments going into the water. Plus, maybe the penetration is low. There's not that many rain barrels in the general community, but the likelihood is high. And so that would be a really ideal behavior for these groups to target. So the survey, it's still available online. You can take the survey if you haven't already. It's baysurvey.org. It is a branch survey where, depending on how you answer the questions, you get a number of different questions. For instance, a lot of the behaviors, which I will go over, are targeted at homeowners, and so if you're an apartment dweller, you immediately kind of skip all those questions and only answer the questions about littering and household drain cleaners and stuff like that. So it's not, some people get all the questions and then some people get less questions. We actually did this in 2 study periods. The first was online, and the second was in mobile tablets at general public events. And this was because during the first whole half of the survey, so keeping in mind when I go through the results, the first half of the survey was biased towards groups that were already doing these behaviors. Because we were sending this out through our own Facebook and social media and listservs, and then working with these watershed organizations who were then sending it out to their members, you can see it's already kind of skewing it towards environmentally friendly behavior, people that are already thinking about these things. So the second round, we put it on a mobile tablet and we identified public events around Maryland that were, would kind of get at the general population, and that included things like canvassing downtown Annapolis, canvassing downtown Silver Spring, going to like 5K runs, to a baseball game, things like that. So feel free to go online and check out the survey. I'm not going to go through everything. So these are the behaviors. There's a lot of them. Rain barrels, rain gardens, buffer vegetation along a stream, ditch, or water's edge, fertilizer use, conservation landscaping, so replacing grass, lawn with conservation landscaping, what you do with leaves that fall on hard surfaces like driveways and sidewalks, septic system upgrades, whether people pick up their pet waste, litter, and then what goes down the drain. And so each one of these questions was asked, and there were several subset questions. So the total number of surveys from 2013 to 2015 was approximately 1,100. The first year with web and email only, we had a little under 500. And then when we did the tablet and web and emailing, we did it all. We had about 650. And so just remembering that first half is kind of biased towards these answers. These numbers just include all answers, even outside the Chesapeake watershed. For whatever reason, we were targeting Maryland, but once you put it on kind of social media, it spread, and people in Illinois and California decided they wanted to take the survey. So I'm going to show you one set of results, and I have this information for all the behaviors if people are interested afterwards. So this is just 2015 data analyzed, because I thought, well, if people answered the question in 2013 and they had rain barrels, they would probably be answering the same in 2015. So there were about 479 responses, and the question was, do you have a rain barrel? And you can see that very few people in Maryland have a rain barrel, and that there's a lot of people that could use a rain barrel, but they don't have it. And of the people that did have a rain barrel, most of them had it connected, which is the important point, right? You can have a rain barrel, but it could sit in your shed for a whole year and it's not doing any good. So we were happy to see that at least if people had it, most people were connected. So then we asked only the people that answered the question, no, I don't have a rain barrel, what is the likelihood that you will get a rain barrel in the future? And so what you have here is broken down by very likely, likely, unlikely, and very unlikely. And you can see that the likelihood is less than we would probably want, right? And the unlikely is pretty high. We coded all of the answers by zip code. We asked every single person what zip code they were in, and so then we can map these kinds of things on the state of Maryland. Now, remembering that these are now averaged results by zip code. For instance, 21401 Annapolis, we had like maybe 15 or 20 answers, and so those are all averaged into these little zip codes. So you can kind of see the spread here. You can see there's some great number of people that are likely to get a rain barrel up here, and maybe not so much down in southern Maryland. But these are, again, just kind of low numbers. Obviously, you can see the spread of the data. We had a lot of information from this part of the western shore and then this part of the eastern shore. And so what I did was I zoomed in on those two areas to really kind of compare them and check them out, because it was where we had the most information. And so thinking broadly about the Severn area, Severn, Magothy, and South, you can see here the overall likelihood of installing a rain barrel is 30% here where we are. And in the Choptank, it's 40%. And it's like, oh, it's more likely that people are going to install a rain barrel, so maybe we need to focus our behaviors there. But what I did was I compared to, do you have a rain barrel? A lot of people already in the Severn actually have a rain barrel already, and so the people that are being asked what is the likelihood that you'll get it are already they've probably been approached and they're not interested as much. Whereas in the Choptank, there's just a lot of potential, right? There's not that many rain barrels to go with, and so there's a higher likelihood that people would adopt it. So these are the kinds of information that we can tease out from this survey. So that's just one example, and what I'm going to go through is the high-level results for each behavior. So not unexpectedly, there were very few rain gardens in place. A lot of people didn't really get what a rain garden was in the true sense of, the technical expertise and the funding and stuff that you would need for it. We did try to provide definitions of this, but even so, some people answered yes, and I just don't think that they were very reliable answers. And so we asked them a two-pronged question: would they be likely to put in a rain garden in the future? And then once they answered that question, we asked, if you had funding and help with funding and installation, would you do it? And so of course it was unlikely to add one, but of course more people were likely if they got financial funding for it. Again, very few rain barrels in place. If so, they only had one, despite multiple downspouts. I mean, if we think of ourselves in our house, I know I have one and I have two downspouts. Got to get to that second one someday. And then again, like we had just seen, about 30% were unlikely to add one. Buffer vegetation along a stream or ditch or water's edge. This could be a tree, shrub, or grass buffer, and we asked them specifically what kind of buffers they had. Everyone was likely to preserve their buffer. If the buffer was there, they were leaving it alone. However, they were very unlikely to plant a grass or tree buffer if they didn't have one. I don't know if this is a cost involved. We didn't ask the barriers to doing this, but it was a really low number that would so the 22.5% is the likelihood. So the 22.5% were likely to plant a grass or tree buffer out of the 100% of people that answered this question. So leaves, again, this is leaves on hard surfaces. So most people are not raking the leaves into the street. So one of the reasons, what we wanted to get was where these leaves are going. And it's you go outside and you see all the decomposing leaves on the street and they're getting into storm drains. Most of that is because people are just letting them fall where they lay, and then the wind is blowing them into the street. So we were kind of happy to see that most people are not raking their leaves into the street and down the storm drain. And that for the people that weren't already bagging or composting their leaves, they seem to be somewhat likely to bag or compost in the future. Conservation landscaping, so this is where you replace grass lawn with native plants, and most people were using native plants already, and if they were likely to replace more grass lawn in the future, they would use native plants. So I think this is one of those behaviors that you don't think about it very often, right? Where we always think about like what a beautiful grass lawn we have and everything like that, but this might actually be a behavior that people would do, and it's easy because they're already interested in using native plants. Fertilizer. Most people are not fertilizing or fertilizing infrequently. And again, remember, the results were kind of skewed, and so we're not as confident in this data as we'd like to be, but we do know no one's willing to stop altogether. But but people were more likely to maybe only fertilize once in the fall or reduce the actual amount that they would put down by about 50%. So that was like good news. Septics, most people pump out within the last 3 years. Most people have not installed or replaced their septic system. And so most people are planning on pumping out within the next 3 years. So people are pumping out, not necessarily replacing or upgrading their septics, and that again is maybe an easier behavior. I will say that the numbers for septics was really low. We were looking at the general population, but if I were to ask this question again, I would target areas that we know have septic systems. So getting more information I think would be helpful. Everybody picks up their dog's waste outside their yard. You could focus on in-yard disposal, but it's very unlikely that people are going to change their behavior and pick up their pet waste from their own yard. And then littering, people are littering, but no one seems to know those people personally, because who knows what this is, if it's passive littering from the back of trucks and stuff like that, or people throwing their cigarette butts out the window, but yet none of us know those people. So if a behavior would to be focused on, I would focus on cigarette butts and food. A lot of people didn't realize they shouldn't be throwing food out the window. So briefly, I'm just going to talk about the impact data. Remember, we wanted to talk about, yes, what are people doing and what is the likelihood, but what behaviors are going to have the most impact on reducing nutrient and sediment to the bay. And so what we did was we ran a simple example using rain gardens with the SMART tool. And so Sarah Lane at Maryland Department of Natural Resources helped us with this. But we had a lot of assumptions because our survey was not geared towards getting at the details. But anyway, so the assumptions are, if a respondent has more than one rain garden, we assumed they had 2. We assumed the drainage area for each rain garden was impervious surface, so that all the water from this area into the rain garden was probably coming from a house, and it was approximately 500 square feet. And then rainfall is treated as 1 inch per rain garden, and that's really typical and a number that's used pretty regularly because no one has detailed rainfall information. So this is the total reduction of 14 pounds, 2 pounds of phosphorus, and 1,500 TSS units. So not that much, right? So this is just taking the number of rain gardens that people said yes they had in this survey, and that's what you got. These are really low numbers, but what we're hoping would be that, if you could scale that up to the whole state, what would that really look like? So it was a really good practical use of the tool, and it really got down to the numbers, which was good, but I would say it was really just an exercise to see how it would work and what we can do in the future with this. So next steps, I'm not going to talk about this too much, but the stewardship goal implementation team is really taking this on. There's already been a complete another section of this survey done by the OpinionWorks group, and I highly recommend looking at Steve's presentation. But the other thing that we're going to do through the stewardship goal implementation team is have focus this baysurvey.org survey for counties and even like HOAs. So this survey seems to do better at kind of the smaller scale, whereas like doing a phone survey really needs to happen for the state or watershed-wide scale. So that's the next steps for that. So I just want to say thanks. I know it was a really quick overview, but please contact me if you have more questions.